of tax harmonization. And for the reference, we as we said, we have already participated at the first one in 2015. We were quite happy at that time with John Utagaol to organize those seminars, which have been, I think, extremely useful. And I think it was a good success for Indonesia. And there is no reason why this one shouldn't be any different. Of course, there is a lot of progress in everybody's situations. And there will be a lot of specific cases. So I will let Ibu Dwi first to lay out the general concept. And after that, I'm sure with the help of our good friend Paluca or Sebastien, we will precise what the most important question which will be addressed to you, Ibu Dwi. But once again, I'm sure it's going to be interesting, and we will eventually continue this discussion by sending you a letter for clarification later on, and come back to our members with your specific answer. Okay, thank you very much, and I pass it back now to Paluca.
Thank you, Philippe. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, everyone. I'm Luca Mascarad, so I will be your moderator for today for this presentation concerning the voluntary disclosure program. We have the pleasure today to have two distinguished guests. First, Ibu Dwi Astuti, Ibu terima kasih banyak atas kehadirannya hari ini dengan kita. Thank you so much for being with us today. We will be very interested to have further information concerning this program, which I think is one of the number 6 of this type of program to disclose voluntary you assets abroad. So we will have a lot of questions concerning our participants and members. By your side will be as well Mr. Sebastien Gautier, managing partner of Mazars Indonesia, who will bring, as mentioned by Philippe, practical insights concerning the implementation of this program, but as well the previous ones. So in the name of all participants, we thank you very much for all the insights you're going to bring us today. And I'm sure they will have quite some questions concerning this topic. And of course, we will have a Q&A session at the end of your presentation for us to share our insight concerning this matter. So without further ado, I will give you the floor. Thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak atas Ibu Dwi Astuti to take the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Mr. Phillips. I see Mr. Lucas and Mr. Sebastien from the letter. It is a very honor for me to be here to share with you regarding our latest program, what we so-called voluntary disclosure program, which is included in our harmonization tax law. So it is quite new, and it is enacted just last year on 29th of October 2021. So I'm really happy to have the opportunity to share with you. And then later on, we will have a discussion session also regarding this program. And then if I'm exceeding the time, please, Mr. Lucas, just tell me, should I stop or should I continue regarding this presentation? So I would like to ask my staff, Inda, please share the presentation so I could easily present it, what we so-called voluntary disclosure program. Actually, voluntary disclosure program is not something new in terms of the international taxation. It is also like already well known, and some countries also already have a similar program with Indonesia. But I think regarding the how it is implemented in every country, maybe it is really depend on a domestic regulation. So that's why I would like to also explain to you what is voluntary disclosure program from Indonesian side. Next, Indah, please. Some people call this program is like a second tax amnesty program. It's not quite wrong, but it is not quite correct also, because there are some similarities, but it is also some differences between two programs. So actually this program is the program that giving the opportunity to the taxpayer to voluntarily disclose their undeclared tax obligations. In this case, the taxpayer who what we call under disclosed all the assets. So the government, Indonesian government in this case, giving the opportunity again to voluntarily disclose by means of income tax payments based on asset disclosure. So it is also, I mean, for sure with the lower rate and then without any penalty in this case. So the differences with the tax amnesty is that if tax amnesty, it is like the mercy from the government to the taxpayer, but this one, it is based on the voluntary actually from the taxpayer. So what is the background for this voluntary disclosure program, or what so-called VDP? Because there is some of the taxpayer that is already become a participant of the tax amnesty program, but they still have some of the assets that have not been disclosed during the tax amnesty program. That is for the fiscal year of 2015. But then again, there is the other condition. There are individual taxpayers also have not reported all the assets during 2016 until 2020 in the annual tax return of 2020. So there is also some taxpayer who didn't completely report their tax obligation during those fiscal years. And then also, regarding the latest condition that Indonesia also signed the convention regarding the automatic exchange of information. In the near future, Indonesia will implement the fully disclosure for this exchange of information in terms of in financial transaction or financial data. On the other side, Indonesia also now have many data from the third party that Indonesia also have, giving the obligation to the third party to give all the data to the tax authority. So that's why, so before we fully implemented those data in our system, so now we will giving the opportunity again once more to the taxpayer. So, based on that, we have voluntary disclosure program. Maybe I would like also tell you that on 2023 that Indonesia will implement the new system, what we so-called core tax. That it is quite sophisticated for us in terms of the tax system, that later on our tax system will be, maybe we can compare to the other developed country. So in this case, when we have this new system, we can easily implement also the data from as a result from the automatic exchange of information, and also the data from the third party. We can matching that in our system. So that's why before we implemented those data, now we're giving the opportunity again to the taxpayer to disclose all the assets that have not been disclosed. Next, please. So based on that, we create the program that giving the simplicity, giving the tax certainty, and also the expediency to the taxpayer. In this case, the aim of this program is we want to increase the voluntary tax compliance from the taxpayer again before we implement the data, the exchange of information data. Next, please. So that's why there is two policy regarding the voluntary disclosure program. As I mentioned earlier in the background, those two background, and then it will become two policy in this FDP program. The first policy is that it is for the participant of the tax amnesty program. For the individual or corporate taxpayer is that not fully disclose their asset by those time. So in this case, disclosure basis will be asset acquired per 31st December 2015. But again, it is undisclosed during the tax amnesty program. So you have to note this is for individual and also for corporate taxpayers. So the rates will be 11% for offshore asset declaration, and it is final, yeah, and then 8% for offshore asset repatriation and domestic declaration. So if it is only declared for offshore asset, it is 11%. If you declare and then repatriate to Indonesia, it become 8%. And it will become more lower, become 6% if this offshore asset not only repatriate and to Indonesia, and then again you invested in Indonesia in terms of government securities or natural resources processing or renewable energy. So that's the first policy. The second policy, you have to be noted, this is only for the individual taxpayer. And then the disclosure basis, it is asset acquired during 2016 until 2020, but you forget to report it in the annual tax return fiscal year 2020. So we giving the opportunity for you to report it to follow this program. And then the rates, it will be 18% for offshore asset declaration. If you bring back to Indonesia, to repatriate to Indonesia, it will become 14%. And then if you bring back to Indonesia and then you invest it in Indonesia, it will become 12%. And the period is only 6 months, start from the 1st January to 30th June of 2020. So it's quite a limited time. It's only 6 months. It's shorter if you compare with the tax amnesty program. Next, please. So if we talk about the benefit, it is, I would like also to mention regarding the background. If you are the participant from the tax amnesty program, and then the government notice or government disclose that you have some asset is not declared yet during the tax amnesty program, it will be finalized using what we regulate in government regulation number 36, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere it is written, and that will be adding by the penalty up to 200%, and the tariff it will be also it's very high. For individual is 25%. For corporate is 30%, and then for certain taxpayer is 12.5%. That will be the penalties if you not reported your asset during the tax amnesty program, and then the government find out that there's some asset is not reported. So that's why in the benefits, if you follow this program, voluntary disclosure program, you will be relieved from those penalties. And then the data protection also, if you follow this VDP program, the data or information disclosed on this notice of asset disclosure, it will be subject. It not become the subject to investigation, to criminal prosecution, or even for the assessment. It's just regular assessment. So that is the advantage from the policy one. From the second policy, if you follow the VDP program, you will not become the object of the tax assessment, or in this case, the tax assessment will not be issued. It is implement for income tax, or also for the VAT, or also for withholding tax. But it is, you have to be careful also. If you are the withholder and then you already withhold the taxes, it is the withholding tax or the VAT, and you not pay that to the government, it still become the object or for the tax assessment, because it is already become government right or become government tax. But if it is regarding your asset, it is your asset that it is came from the income tax or VAT or withholding tax, it is belong to you, it is will not be subject to the tax assessment. In terms of data protection, it will be the same. It will be shall not be subject to tax inquiry, investigation, or criminal prosecution against the taxpayer. Next, please. So this is the consequences of partial disclosure for the policy one. In this case, if again for the policy one, you not fully disclose, or you fail to disclose all the assets during the period of voluntary disclosure program, and this additional asset which is not fully reported by the taxpayer, and then it is found out by the Digitax, so it will be imply or apply the penalty under Government Regulation Number 36, 2017. And then also will be adding by penalties. As I mentioned earlier, the rate will be 25% for the corporate, 30% for the individual, and then 12.5% for the certain taxpayer, plus 200% of penalties. It is also the same with the tax amnesty program, because for the policy one, the participant is especially from the taxpayer who also become the participant of tax amnesty program. It is for individual, also for corporation. This is for the policy one. Next, what if you disclose only partially for the policy two? In this case, the taxpayer failed to disclose all assets for the 2016 and 2020 fiscal year. So in this case, the undisclosed asset, if later on find out by the Digitax, will be give the sanction as 30%. I mean, the penalties will be 30% times additional asset, and then also will be imply the penalties under law and taxation general provision of and procedures. In this case, the the general rules will be applied as on top of the 30%. So still there is a consequences if you not follow all the program, I mean the policy program for the voluntary disclosure program. There is a consequences. Next, please. So in this case, if you want to follow, what is the procedure? It is very easy because we provide all the form, the attachment, the process, all the process. It is through DGP online portal. It is very, very easy. And it is 24/7. You can 24/7 every day, every time you can submit the electronic form for this notice of asset declaration, or in bahasa we call it surat pemberitahuan pengungkapan harta, or SPPH. So it is very easy. You just like open the program, you submit it, and then make a payment, and then make the attachment, send it, and then you just give, and then you just receive the notice of asset declaration. It's very easy. You don't have to meet the tax official. You don't have to come to the tax office. So it will be, I mean, very easy. You can follow it from your premises. So, and then also this you can follow this so many times. I mean, you can submit it once, 2, 3, you can revise it, but you cannot withdraw. If you withdraw it with the summit, for example, for this first submission, you said that the final income tax you have to pay, for example, 100. And then you make the revision, and then this 100 becomes 0. In this case, will be considered you withdraw your submission, and then you cannot submit another notice of asset declaration. So again, you have to be very careful in this case. If you make the correction and it becomes 0, it means you withdraw and you're giving up your right to follow this program, and then you cannot submit another notice of asset declaration. So in this case, you have to be very careful when you make the submission of the asset declaration. Next, please. So what is the documents have to admit when you follow the program? The first, you have to provide the tax payment receipt number, what we so-called NTPN. It is, you will get this number once you pay the final income tax regarding the asset declaration through the system. And then you have to also make the detailed list of disclosed asset, what kind of asset, how much is the price, something like that. And then also list of liabilities if you get those assets by liabilities to the third party. And then also you have to check to make the decision whether you will be repatriated or you will be invested or something like that. There's a form, you just giving the tick or the check, the mark in the form. So there's also supplementary document for a policy, the second policy. You have to make the statement to withdraw any request of overpayment refund or other legal action. So in this case, if you do have a refund processes, either for income tax or for a VAT, you have to withdraw those requests. You have to giving up your overpayment or your refund processes. And also you have to giving up your legal action. For example, if you have an objection or if you have a lawsuit, or if you have a tax appeal, you have to withdraw those legal action and then submit the letter of withdrawal letters for those legal action, so you can follow the VDV program. Otherwise, you cannot follow this program. So it is also very important. You have to consider before you follow this program. Once you follow this program, you cannot ask for refund for this certain period of VDV program. For example, for the second policy program, I mean, you have a refund for fiscal year 2017 and 2018. You have to giving up those refund. If you ask for those year the refund, and in this case you cannot follow or you cannot participate in the VDV program. Next, please. So how you calculate the net asset for final income tax per policy, the first policy? The net asset will be calculated. You just times the rate times the net asset. But the net asset, you have to calculate first what is the net asset. Net asset will be asset value subtract corresponding liabilities. This is for the first policy. The first policy is, as I mentioned earlier many times, it is related to the participant or for the taxpayer who already also become the participant for the tax amnesty program. In the tax amnesty program, there is a certain limitation for the liabilities. For individual taxpayer, maximum only allow 50% of asset value. For corporation, maximum 75% of asset value. So in this case, the corresponding liabilities only allow until maximum 50% for individual and 70% for corporate, cannot more than that. And if your asset you want to convert into rupiah, so the foreign currency conversion is based on Minister of Finance exchange rate at the end of the latest fiscal year. What is the latest fiscal year? It is 31st of December 2015 for the policy one, or for the first policy. Next, please. So in this case, if your asset is not cash, so you have to make the valuation for your asset. What is the value? For cash or cash equivalent, use nominal value. But for land on building, use the sales value of taxable object, or in this case, in Bahasa, you call it NJOP, nilai jual objek pajak. And for vehicle, also use the sales value that all the value determined by the government. So if your asset is in the form of gold and silver, you can use the published value by PT Aneka Tambang. So please also you have to be careful for this. If your asset is in terms of shares and warrants traded on the Indonesian Stock Exchange, so in this case, use the trading value published by PT BEI. In this case, Indonesia Stock Exchange. I'm trying to say that. I forgot what is in Bahasa, the abbreviation. Oh, Bursa Efek Indonesia, sorry. PT Bursa Efek Indonesia, Indonesia Stock Exchange. Use the value published by PT Bursa Efek Indonesia. So if your asset is in the form of government securities or bonds, or also debt securities or sukuk issued by the company, please use the value published by the security pricing agency. So again, you use per end date of the latest fiscal year. What is the latest fiscal year? Again, I mentioned clearly here, this is 31st of December 2015. This is for policy 1. So if you also wonder maybe what if the such value is not available? So in this case, use public appraisal valuation. Please, you have to use public appraisals valuation because it is quite a long time ago. So that's why the third party judgment in this case, appraisal valuation is very needed in order to determine what is the fair value for your asset. Next, please. So this is for the policy, the second policy or the policy 2. It has term and condition. You should be aware of this. As I mentioned, there is a term and condition that if you want to follow the second policy, you are not being tax audited or not under preliminary investigation for fiscal years of 2016, 17, 18, 19, and or 20th. It is also not under tax crime investigation. So you have to be very careful. It is not only for income tax, but it is for all the taxes, income tax, withholding taxes, and then also for the VAT. And then the general requirement also, you have to have tax ID, tax identification number, or what we so-called Nomor Pokok Wajib Pajak or NPWP. And then you have to pay also the final income tax. You have to submit the annual tax return year 2020. If you're not yet submit this tax return for fiscal year 2020, you have to submit it first. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you have to withdraw any request for refund and then also for legal action for those respective years. In this case, 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20th. And there is two things you have to be very careful regarding the second policy. So in this case, after the tax law on the harmonization tax regulation is being amended, if you submit the amended annual tax return, it will be considered not to be submitted. I will repeat it again. If you submitted the amended annual tax return after Undang-Undang HPP or tax law harmonization of tax regulation, it is being enacted, those amended annual tax return will not consider as already submitted. So, because why it is not considered? Because what you amended or what you put in your amended annual tax return, it will become the subject or become the material or become the substance for voluntary disclosure program. That's why we cannot consider that as an amended annual tax return. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you have to submit also the tax return for year 2020. You must submit this tax return first. Okay, so next page, please. How you calculate? It is calculate the final income tax. It is very simple. RET will be times net asset, and then in this case, there's no limitation for liability to be subtracted from the asset. So asset will be separated by liability principles. So it is all the liabilities you have regarding your asset. It can be subtracted from your asset. It is, and then if it is regarding the foreign currency, it is based on the MOF exchange rate at the end of the year 2020, the fiscal year 2020. Okay, next, please. So what is the asset valuation? It is very simple because only two, if there is a cash or a cash equivalent, use nominal value. And if it is other than cash, use the historical cost. Why it is very simple? Because it's quite, it is quite recent. It is only 2016. It's not so long ago. So I think in this case, you still have the historical cost or historical value of your assets. So, but if those such values are not available, you may use the fair value per 31st of December 2020 for similar or equivalent assets according to your own valuation. But in this case, of course, you have to be very careful because it is should similar or equivalent asset. It's not like you compare the Ferrari with the Honda, for example. It's not similar, it's not equivalent. Or you have a house in Pondok Indah, compare with somewhere. Of course, you cannot compare that because the price is different. So if you have like a Ferrari, you should compare with another luxurious car. And if you have houses in the very distinguished place or very like expensive place, you have to compare also with the one which is located in the same area. Okay, next, please. This is only the final income, the code. I mean, the code is mata anggaran pembayaran, what you so called. It is the payment code. I think it is not so important for you, but one thing for sure, the payment that accepted for the VDP only cash payment through bank or the post office or other agency, but it should be cash. The overbooking cannot substitute the payment. For example, this is the example. You have money in government, and then you have overbook, and then you said, I will follow this program, and then I will use my overbook in Digitex. You cannot do that because it is clearly mentioned by the regulation. By the regulation, it should be paid cash. You cannot do overbook to substitute the payment. So that is also another things you have to be considered, and you have or you have to be underlined. Next, please. So as I mentioned earlier, that you can also amended several times the notification or the asset declaration. So in this case, you have to very detail what is the asset, the unamended asset, I mean the previous asset, and then what is the amended asset, or what is the additional net asset, or what is the asset you omit, and then what is the asset you deleted, or any typographical error, miscalculation, or changes in text, and everything you have to be clear. but you can have it as much as you want. You have 1 time, 2 time, 3 time amended your asset declaration. But as I mentioned earlier, you have to be careful. If you amend it and it's become 0, it means you give up your right to follow the VDP, and then it will be considered you not following the VDP program. So if the amended disclose program will be become underpaid for the final income tax, so in this case you have to add more, you have to pay more in advance. But it will, if it is become overpaid, you can always request for tax refund or overbooking because of this. So not to be worried. If it was typical the typographical or errors in the tax rates, for example, it should be like 18%, but you said it is 28%, or maybe it should be 6%. You type it 8%, so there is miscalculation 2%. You can always ask for refund regarding this, or you overbook to another payment. Next, please. So in this case, this is like I mentioned earlier, if it is you withdraw, the disclosed program become 0. So in this case, you giving up your right to become participant of this program, and you cannot resubmit the asset declaration. Okay, next, please. Yeah, this is regarding the scrutiny. Of course, after you file or you submit the disclosure asset, we will do the supervisory in this case. If there is a typography error or miscalculation, we also can make a clarification for you. And based on this activity, if we find out the net asset do not reflect the actual fact, or for example, asset acquisition period does not meet with the VDP requirement, or maybe you being audited, or you being investigated, or any other cases that fail to satisfy the requirement, and then of course we can also withdraw the letters of the surat keputusan, or what we call the letters, the letter of the participation. We can always withdraw that. So it's though it is online system and it is very easy, one you submit it and then you got the letters, it is not mean that we don't have any surveillance process after that. There is also supervisory activity in the back office to make sure that everything is in accordance of law and regulation. Next, please. So now I would like to talk regarding the repatriation. The repatriation, should be done no later than 30th September of 2020. And as I said earlier, should be via bank. You cannot bring you declare your house and then you bring your house or bring the cars. It's not possible. It should be valued as a cash equivalent, and then you transfer it through bank. And it is the holding period. It is 5 years from the issuance of the escrow. Yeah. So, and then again, once you come, you follow the FDP program, and then there is within the 5 years of the holding period, the asset could not be transferred offshore. It must stay in Indonesia. And it is also applied to domestic asset declaration. It's not only from offshore, but it is also for domestic asset declaration. Next, please. So, and then now for investment. Investment form, it can be in the form of natural resources processing or renewable energy. It could be in the form of new business establishment or equity participation. Or you can just bought the share of the company or the corporation, or you can set up a new business. But it should be in the field of natural resources processing or renewable energy. What kind of natural resources, what kind of renewable energy? Later on, there is a decision from the Minister of Finance in what area, in what field, in what industry, this natural resource processing and renewable energy. Or you can also invest in the government securities or government bonds. And then for the investment, the due date is no later than 30th September 2023. And if repatriation is 30th September of 2022 or 22nd, but for investment, no later than 30th September 2023. And then it's also the same. The holding period is also 5 years from the investment date. If there is a question, could we or could the taxpayer transfer to the different form or the different portfolio, or it is interchangeable? Yes, it is. But it is after 2 years. So, and it can be also different portfolio, but it is maximum 2 times, and from each transfer shall be made in the different calendar year, and then there is a maximum gap also is 2 years. Why government give the maximum gap of 2 years? Because like this, for example, for the first 2 years, you said that I will be invested in the government securities on bond or bonds. And then you change your mind. I will be invested, it is in natural resources processing, but I want to set up a new business, or I want to establish a new business. So in this case, you need time to set up a new company. So that's why we give the time gap for this case to set up the business for 2 years. So in this case, but this 2 years cannot be calculated or included for those 5 years. It will be defer those 5 years holding period. So again, it could be interchangeable, and then it will be the government also give the time gap for this interchange portfolio. Investment differences. Next, please. So this is I think entities I already explained to you. And we can skip this. Yeah, this is what if it is the government securities or government bonds. So what happened? What is happening with the? Yeah. So for the domestic declaration or repatriation, if you want to submit, if you want to invest in the government securities or government bond, it's only can in terms of rupiah. There is no US dollar, there is no foreign currency or US dollar for this. For the investment, it is all for Indonesian rupiah. So, and it is also, it should be placed in the private placement for the primary market, not secondary market. This is true also, the investment, it should be through the main dealer as a private placement in the primary market, not in the secondary market. So in this case, you cannot buy the government security or bonds through me, for example, because I'm not a main dealer, and then I will be considered as secondary market. So it will be not counted as investment in terms of government securities or government bonds. Next, please. So what is about the natural resources processing or renewable energy? As I mentioned earlier, the business activity detail, in what area, what sector, it will be decided by decree, the Minister of Finance decree. And then it can be establishing a new activity or set up new company, or only equity participation to right issue or initial public offering. You may choose either in establishing a new company or set up new company, or you just become the participant for initial public offering or right issue. So in this case, the natural resources processing, it will be include processing natural resource for raw material into semi-finished goods or finished goods for value-added purposes. Well, for renewable energy, undertaking or focusing on energy from sources that are naturally replenishing. So in this case, natural resources basically, that is still, I mean, we do have many resources in this case. So for this time being, what is the business sectors, what is the list is still finalizing the discussion between Fiscal Policy Agency, Ministry of Industry, and Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, and many other agency in this case. So within, I think within a short time, the list will be will be enacted. Next, please. If there's any report needed, if you follow this program, yes, indeed. Every participant should commit it to make a report through DJT website about regarding the investment realization, regarding what is the, I mean, what kind of investment and what is the realization or something like that, until the period of until the holding period is ended. So in this case, 5 years. So you have to make the details about the repatriation, or also you have to report the investment details regarding your asset. So in this case, it will be in the same time when you submit your annual tax return. The submission of the report, it will be in the same time if you submit the annual tax return. Okay, so next, please. Okay, I think I already, oh yeah. This is the consequences. Actually, I already mentioned regarding this. If you, as a participant of the second policy of the VDP program, you cannot submit any request for tax refund and legal action. Once you submit that, and then it will be resulted in the revocation of the asset. Yeah, so in this case, your asset will be revoked, and then it will be no longer valid. Next, please. What if there is a dispute regarding this? You can always settle through lawsuit to the tax court. We provide especially for the second policy, yeah, it is very possible there is disputes. So that's why we provide the legal the legal settlement in this case through filing a lawsuit to the tax court. Okay, so lawsuit can be filed on the notice of underpayment assessment for the policy 2, And then it is also regarding the notice for underpayment assessment in case of repatriation or investment. Yeah, so it will be based on our general law, that based on a regulation that it will be implemented during this time. Next, please. Oh, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention. If you have anything to ask, please, I will be delighted to answer the question. And I giving back the time to Lucas. Please, Lucas.
Thank you very much, Ibu, Astuti. Terima kasih banyak untuk atas presentasi Anda. It was really clear. Thank you very much, and I think quite complete. Of course, I'm sure all members and participants will have questions, but first we have the pleasure to give the floor to Sebastien. But just one remark is that it's really noticeable that that this VDP is including investment related tax relief concerning the processing of mineral resources and renewable energy. So this is something I will have some questions about after, but it's as well a good sign for this program to incite people to participate in. Sebastien, thank you, Ibu. Sebastien, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luca. Let me just share my screen. So thank you, Luca. Thank you, Ibu, Astuti. So maybe my presentation probably, will feel a bit redundant after the presentation of Ibu, Astuti, because I believe, mostly we are talking about the same program and the same characteristics. So I will just try, to emphasize the most important aspects once again that Ibu, Astuti has already mentioned. So I'll go quickly through it, then we have more time probably, for the Q&A session with the participants, which I believe is the most important in this event today. So briefly, as you are all aware, the voluntary disclosure program is not the first time that Indonesia is conducting tax amnesty. I would say that almost every single president over the last 50 years, has conducted tax amnesty. And most notably, President Jokowi in 2016, when he launched the last one, the tax amnesty. The tax amnesty at that time, I believe, was considered as quite successful in terms of declaration of assets, because I believe it was more than 5,000 trillion rupiah at that time. In terms also probably of tax collection, maybe where it was not as successful as expected at that time, it was in terms of repatriation, with still a lot of assets believed to be still held outside Indonesia. So in 2016, basically, the government of Indonesia mentioned clearly that should be the last time for taxpayer, to be given the opportunity to correct their situation. And there were quite a lot of communication at that time in 2016, 2017 to encourage a taxpayer to join this program that was supposed to be the last one in Indonesia. So you would say, why another one? Just 5 or 6 years after. As mentioned by Ibu Astuti, there are several reasons behind that. One of them being that even if we can consider that the tax amnesty in 2016 was successful, still, as I was mentioning before, there was a general feeling that some assets were not reported at that time, were not repatriated, that was known, but also were not reported at that time. So as at the same time, in accordance with the tax amnesty at that time, those participants that would not have fully declare those assets would be facing quite hefty penalties as of today in case of discovery by the Indonesian tax authority of those undeclared assets. Then in I would say a gesture of goodwill, the Indonesian government decided to give another opportunity or another chance to the taxpayer on a voluntary basis, basically, to correct their situation and to report any asset that would not have been properly reported already in 2016-2017. Second point, feeling probably that, you know, for the last 5 years, some assets have still not yet been properly reported for the 2016-2020 period, then it would also give some opportunity to individual taxpayers to correct their situation. And also, as mentioned by Gautier Astuti, a clear recognition that all over the world, you know, we have entered a new era of transparency in terms of taxation, a new era of collaboration with the implementation of the automatic exchange of information, which basically Indonesia joined in 2017 with the first exchanges made in 2018. Then the taxpayer in Indonesia face, I would say, as time going by, a risk which become higher and higher to have their improper situation in terms of asset and liability undiscovered at any time. So once again, it's a gesture of goodwill from the Indonesian government to give them this. So the voluntary disclosure program is part of the Harmonization of Tax Regulation Law, which was promulgated last year by the end of the year. So this law is covering several topics, you know, related to VAT, to personal income tax, but also in its chapter 5, so the voluntary disclosure program. So as mentioned by Gautier Astuti, there is a willingness to improve the voluntary compliance of taxpayers through this program. This is the main goal. So because of that, this program is providing opportunities to correct declaration for taxpayer through 2 schemes. So scheme 1 is related to the participants to the previous tax amnesty. And it's then about correcting the 2015 situation that was earlier submitted and taxpayer in order for them to correct by the end of 2020 their situation in terms of net assets reported. If we move quickly, probably this has been already explained quite in details. So the different tax rate applicable with a rate which is gradually interesting for taxpayers, depending on whether they are willing first to repatriate their assets or not in Indonesia. And then secondly, whether they are interested or not to invest those assets in the government securities, the industry, the downstream industry, so the processing of natural resources, and also the renewable energy. So here on the next slide, you have an overview of the timeline and basically the assets which are subject to the voluntary disclosure program. So what's important, so for the scheme 1, we are here only looking at taxpayers who have joined the previous tax amnesty, and that would be basically for their assets not yet reported. When for scheme 2, it's only open to individual, whether those individuals have joined or not the previous tax amnesty. So scheme 1 ends by 31st December 2015 in terms of net assets, while scheme 2 ends by end of 31st December 2020 in terms of net assets for the period 2016-2020 in terms of increase of net assets. So those who would have not joined the tax amnesty back in 2016-2017, but that may have some assets undeclared from that period, basically are not covered by the tax amnesty and are not facing any issue, as those years are no expired. So in terms of condition to fulfill, I think that has been also explained. The most important things is, once again, to emphasize that if you want to join the VDP, you should basically revoke any request for tax restitution. This is quite important, and this is specifically applicable to Scheme 2. It's meant to individual, and you needs not to be investigated. Otherwise, this will not work. So there are several steps as presented earlier in the previous presentation. First one, so regarding the disclosure. Second one, the correction of disclosure, which is permitted in the presentation of the VDP program. Then some examination parts, repatriation part, and some monitoring. If we move to the first basically step of the VDP, so in terms of value to report, so as Astuti has explained, here what we try to report is a concept of net assets, so patrimonial approach. It's mean the undeclared assets minus the value of the liability that would have been used to acquire those assets. In terms of value to report, here on the slide, I'm focusing specifically on the Scheme 2 rules. As for the Scheme 1, basically the rules applicable would be the one already in place for the previous tax amnesty in 2016-2017. So what is important is for the asset as acquisition cost. So for instance, land, property, apartment, houses. So in that situation, as an individual, if you have some undeclared assets, you would need to report it at acquisition cost or at similar value for a similar good that was expected previously. And this is individual tax assessment from the taxpayer. Liability to be used. So specifically for the Scheme 2, you can indeed use 100% of the liability used at the time to acquire those assets. I think this we can move because it has been explained. So the VDP give you then the possibility to amend the declaration of asset that you would have done. So this has been introduced, as a possibility in case of mistake in the first basically disclosure statement submitted. Why it could be, a mistake in terms of value of assets reported, or a mistake in terms of computation of the final tax rate to be paid. And as mentioned also earlier, in order for you to submit an amendment, you need first to have paid any additional final tax that would result from the amendments of the disclosure you are doing. In terms of revocation, there are also some permitted situation. And I think what's most important is to focus on the consequences of a revocation, because if you do a revocation of a previously asset declaration form, then it's mean that you cannot resubmit one more time, and you are considered not joining the VDP. So meaning that you are not protected anymore by the benefits of this program, as it was explained earlier by Astuti. In terms of holding period, so it was just mentioned a few minutes ago. So this is a 5 years period to hold the assets for the asset that you would be repatriating, or the one you are already holding here domestically in Indonesia. The target to do so and the deadline is by 30 September 2022. And if you fail to do so, then you will have to face additional tax consequences calculated based on your personal income tax return for financial year 2022. And then there will be also some monitoring activities performed by the Indonesian tax authority for a 5-year period, and that will consist in submitting an annual realization report at year-end, as it was the case during the previous tax amnesty. For eligible investments, so as it was explained also, you have 3 possibilities: either buying on the primary markets some government debt securities, or investing in the processing of natural resources industry, or in the renewable energy industry. So you can do some green field investments in terms of downstream and renewable energy, or also you can buy an existing businesses participating in right issue or initial offering of existing business. These investments should be made at the latest by 30 September 2023. So the Indonesian government is giving time to the taxpayer, basically, to put in place, in motion, these investments. And similarly to the holding of assets, for the investment, you need also to report on a yearly basis the situation of your investment during a 5-year period through the annual realization report. So quickly, last slide of this presentation, in terms of what we believe are the most important things to keep in mind for the taxpayer regarding the voluntary disclosure program. So if you join as an individual to the scheme 2 of the VDP, so then you will get a waiver from the issuance of tax assessments for financial year 2016 to 2020. So you are protected to further tax assessments, obviously assuming that you are conducting properly the VDP. One thing is also very, very important in terms of data protection. So data communicated through this program cannot be used further by the Indonesian tax authority for tax investigation or for criminal prosecution. If you fail basically to abide by the rules of the games, then you will be facing as a taxpayer some consequences, being some additional tax to be paid. So for individual taxpayer, 30% or 35% even with the new enacted personal income tax rate, plus the monthly penalty in accordance with prevailing regulation, that would be increased by a factor of 15%. And the last point, also once again, re-emphasize this: taxpayer not participating in the VDP will be remaining exposed to the sanction of 200% of undeclared assets. So here we are talking specifically of the taxpayer, individual or corporate, who joined the tax amnesty in the past, the program from 2016-2017. And if basically they do not join the VDP and their situation still remain not correct in accordance with their patrimoine, then they would be facing still those sanctions. I think very quickly, Luca, this is what I can share to avoid, to be too redundant with Ibu Dwi Astuti.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Gautier, pour votre présentation. Thank you very much for your presentation. No, it was really good for us as the presentation from Ibu Dwi Astuti was really precise to have an highlight of the main topics that this program is covering. So maybe if thank you very much again for both of you to have made this presentation. We can now go through the Q&A session. So of course, participants, you may either ask your questions in the chat, or well, you can request as well to take the floor. But on our side, actually, our members from IFCCI have a few of them have sent some questions, which I've tried to synthesize in order to save some time. So some of the questions, and it will be directed to both of our distinguished speakers, but as well if Ibu Dwi Astuti can answer first. It would be handful. So the first question is concerning the definition and qualification of assets, and in order to determine if these assets, which assets are concerned, or if some assets have been excluded from the scope of the VDP. And as a subsidiary question to this question, which was raised by Mr. Christophe Glass from the director of Tosia Hotels, we had as well some questions concerning assets or earnings of expatriates which are residents in Indonesia and that they omitted to declare in their annual tax return. Could these earnings, derived from overseas, may be proceeded to be cleared and obtain a tax clearance certificate from this program? So I will maybe if you can enlighten us concerning the definition and qualification of assets and foreign assets first, and we will go for the other questions after. Thank you.
I don't know if Ibu do we want?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Actually, I already received like 6 questions. Should I answer it one by one? I read the questions, or maybe Sebastien also will help me to answer. So I will actually first. There is a question. Does this program covers foreign citizens who are tax resident in Indonesia? There are many expatriates with complex financial affairs. That is the first question. Actually, according to the regulation, implementing regulation number 196 regarding this program, there is no certain limitation whether this is expatriate or not, as long as the participant is a taxpayer, in this case, a resident of Indonesia, having the tax identification number, and then also have the tax obligation in Indonesia, they can follow this program. What I'm trying to say is that though you are expatriate but you already stay in Indonesia for quite some times and you are eligible as the resident of Indonesia, you are having the tax identification number here in Indonesia. In this case, you are become a taxpayer in Indonesia. In this case, you are eligible to follow this program. For example, if you are stays in Indonesia maybe for like 5 years, so in this case you have the tax obligation. The tax obligation as a resident of Indonesia, it is the same with other taxpayer. So your income also will be based on the worldwide income system, and it is also follow the self-assessment systems. So in this case, if you follow the program, yes, indeed, you can follow this program, and then you can also include your asset received from offshore or outside Indonesia, as long as those assets, it is not as long as it is based on the worldwide income system in Indonesia. So you have to declare in your tax return. If you are not yet declare it, and then you should, I think you should follow this program. That is my answer for the first questions. Mr. Sebastien, or you want to also answer the question? What do you think about my answer?
I think, Ibu, it's perfect. As we know, indeed, you know, foreigner residing in Indonesia and becoming Indonesian tax residents must follow the same rules than Indonesian tax residents. So basically, as you were mentioning rightly, this is the concept of worldwide income that would apply. This concept, you know, was also already, I would say, explained during the previous tax amnesty in 2016 and 2017 as an opportunity indeed to report any revenue that would not have been done in the past by some foreigners. So the voluntary disclosure program is introducing a new opportunity for all Indonesian residents, including foreigners, basically to reapply thoroughly the mechanism of the worldwide concept of income.
Yes. Yeah, this is the answer. I agree with you. There is a second question actually. Mr. Lucas, do you want to read the second question? Because I have a 6th question here.
Of course, with pleasure, Ibu. No, so yes, the second question is from Ibu Juliania, so German Finance of PT Geodis Wilson, Indonesia. And she wanted to know if the VDP could be applicable for company to do voluntary disclosure for year 2018 to 2020. So very precise question.
Yeah, actually, if it is based on the regulation, it's not applicable for corporation or for company to do the voluntary disclosure for year 2018 and until 2020, because it is only apply or for individual only. Instead, maybe you can have amendment your tax annual return if you not disclose all your asset yet, or maybe you can have, or you can follow the past penal program tax. It is also some kind of similar with this program actually, under the regulation, government regulation number 36 of 2017, but with different tariffs, and then there is another penalty for that. Maybe you wonder why the second scheme or the second policy is not included for the corporation, because as also explained by Mr. Sebastien, there's many programs actually prior to this program that giving the opportunity for the taxpayer, including the corporation, to fulfill their tax obligation. So in our opinion, the corporation, it is already like good enough or comply enough in order to meet their tax and obligation. So that's why for the corporation, we're not included for the second program. So again, my short answer is that you cannot follow, or it's not applicable for company to do voluntary disclosure for year 2018 until 2020, but instead you can make the you can follow the government regulation number 36 year 2017, or simply you make an amendment or correction your annual tax return in order to report your assets. That will be my answer.
Very clear. Thank you, Ibu. Maybe we can go to the next question, if you agree. So it's a question from a PTCMS CGM Indonesia. They would like to know if this VDP includes offshore earnings earned by expatriates and omitted in their annual tax return. If yes, how could they proceed to clear it and obtain tax clearance certificate?
Okay. Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, it is also could be include the asset that gain from outside of Indonesia by the expatriates, as long as these expatriates are already eligible as a resident of Indonesia. So if they are already become a resident of Indonesia, have a right and obligation as other taxpayers in Indonesia, it means that these expatriates in Indonesia is already for quite some times. So in this case, the worldwide income system will be applied. So that's why if this expatriate get the asset or the income from outside Indonesia, and it is not yet reported the annual tax return, it could be follow this program. So what way? It is depend on the condition. If it is obtained in the period of 1985, for example, until 2015, it's long period. Long time ago, it can be follow the first policy or the first scheme of the voluntary disclosure program. But if it is obtained during the period of time 2016 until 2020, it can be if you are individual, you can disclose it with the second scheme of this program. But if you corporation, as I mentioned earlier, no, it is for sure for expatriate, it is individual. So you can follow the second scheme of the this program. That will be my answer.
Thank you very much, Ibu. Sorry, may I just for clarification? It's really concerning the definition of the distinction and definition of assets and earnings. Yeah. And here I'm still not really 100% clear. When you say when you mention that so all assets should be declared, this is very clear. But what about earnings such as salaries, bonus, other types which are not qualified in most of the jurisdictions as assets, but as earnings?
Income. Because for in Indonesian tax system, also income it is defined as any additional economic capabilities at any form. Any additional economic capabilities at any form, it will be considered as income in Indonesia within Indonesian tax system. So in this case, if you get the bonus or if you get like a commission or anything or from outside, as long as you are stays in Indonesia as taxpayers in Indonesia, so it will be taxed in Indonesia. Because
and then it can be included.
It can be included in the voluntary disclosure program.
Okay, and this could apply, for instance, as well for personal gains, such as inheritance, derived from overseas, all types of. Very clear. Thank you very much, Ibu. Then another question concerning then the procedure, the process, and the impact of VDP concerning towards ongoing process. So a question from PTBET Indonesia concerning they are actually applying for VAT restitution. Would participating in the VDP will affect in any way the restitution submission?
Sorry, I'm not following the last sentence. Please, can you repeat it for me?
Will participating in the VDP affect the restitution submission of VAT?
Oh, VAT, yeah. Sorry, refund for VAT. Yes, it is. Indeed, it will be affect the refund for VAT. Any kind of refund, it should be revoked. It should be a withdrawal. So in this case, if you want to follow the VDP program, any refund you ask regarding the VAT or income tax or withholding tax should be revoked, should be withdrawn, and then you're eligible to follow the program. Any kind of refund.
Okay, very clear. Thank you. Thank you, Ibu.
Yeah.
So the last question we had prepared was as well concerning assets, but I think we've already answered to this question. But just to be clear, there is no exclusion included within the VDP. No asset exclusion at all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ibu. We may have as well some time for some other questions that have been requested during your presentation. If you would like to answer a few one, maybe Sebastien and
yeah, maybe Ibu, maybe we can probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ibu, but when we say there is no assets exclusion from the VDP, actually we could say that any asset acquired before 31st December 2015 for an individual taxpayer or a corporation that would have not joined the tax amnesty is an exclusion by definition.
Yeah.
Because I believe this is probably a quite important point for some of our members, especially individuals that may have not joined the tax amnesty in 2016-2017, and probably are wondering, should I join it as of today? While what I want to report is some assets that I bought, a long time ago. For instance, a property in France that I acquired or I inherited in the 80s, in the 90s.
Yeah.
So my understanding as of today would be those type of assets are excluded from the VDP and cannot be reported through KIM 2.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, maybe I'm not clear enough regarding that, Sebastien. What I'm saying that is that as long as you are eligible as taxpayer in Indonesia, if you acquire those assets before you become a taxpayer in Indonesia, of course, it's not eligible to report it in this VDP program. If it is acquired a long time ago and then during those time you're not yet become resident of Indonesia, there is no there are such thing you have to report it. So that's why the first requirement is that you have to have the TIN, taxpayer identification number. So when you start the taxpayer identification, once you have the tax identification number, you are eligible as Indonesian taxpayer when you receive the income from offshore. So it will be, and then it will become asset in Indonesia. So that's eligible to follow this program. So if it is a long time ago and it's not yet you become Indonesian taxpayer, of course there's that is out of scope of this program. Yeah, I think that's clear. Yeah.
Thank you, Bo.
Yeah. There's a question from the chat room actually. There is
yes, please, Ibu, if there's a question that you would like to answer.
Yeah. Yeah, there's many important questions there. So may I just read and then answer the questions?
Yes, please. It will be a great insight for us.
I make your job so easy.
Every
make your job
information
so easy. So the first question, could the cash repatriation be made to Indonesia before submitting the report to tax office? Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, this program is intended to give the opportunity for the taxpayer who's not yet report the asset through the tax, the annual tax return to the tax office. So that's why we give this opportunity. And then again, if the cash repatriate made to Indonesia before submit to the report to tax office, yes, it can be, it could be, as long as you are taxpayer of Indonesia. That's the idea. You disclose it through this program, and then rather you report it to annual tax return. And then benefit or related benefit participation FDV in participate. Tax office will not issue an SP2DK. Yes, it is. If it is, I mean, in the same fiscal year. For example, if the fiscal year 2018 become the subject to is not yet become, if in bahasa there is because there's the question in bahasa it will not be being audited for those parameters. For example, 17, 18, 9, 20 voluntary become the follow by this program. Okay. That's in bahasa. Untuk kebijakan in bahasa, maybe I read it in bahasa. Apakah jamin timbangan? Yes, I already mentioned. Guarantee will not become a target of the audit as long as ya laporkan. Nah, I'm mixing in action. Sorry, my signal. I'm lost. I'm losing the connection. I'm back again. So the question is that, yeah, it will not become the target of audit for those particular years, but there is the you have to very careful. Also, there is an exception if, for example, you are corporation and you already withhold withholding tax, or you also withhold the VAT from the third party or you from your client, but you not report it or you not pay this withholding tax or VAT to the government. If the government find out that you are not fulfill your obligation as the withholder, but you already, in fact, you already withhold those taxes for VAT and withholding tax, it still become the object of correction or audit, because those tax is belong to the government. It's not your money. So you have to differentiate these two conditions. It should be. I will be different. You have to differentiate these two conditions. We will not audit it, or we giving you the guarantee not to be audited. It is regarding your asset, that include in the VDV program. Definitely, it will not become the target of audit. But once again, I repeat it: if it is from your obligation, you withhold the tax from withholding tax or VAT, and you are not pay this withholding tax to the government, and then the government find out this, it will become subject to the audit. And then the second question is regarding the refund. I already talked to you that this refund should be revoked, and then should be stopped, the audit regarding the refund. And then after that, if you already submit the letter that you are withdraw your refund process, either it is for income tax or for the VAT, and then you can follow the PDV program. I think the last question is regarding, I already answered, if an asset has been acquired or inherited legally in foreign country long time ago, and for which taxes have been fully paid, would there be obligation to pay again taxes to JP? No, it is definitely, I mean, if it is long time ago, it is not eligible anymore. It's not fulfill the requirement.
Yes, thank you very much, Ibu.
Yeah,
if you may, I'll have just a quick question concerning the investment for the tax reduced rate for investment in processing of mineral resources and the renewable energy. Would this, so I understand that it is still under discussion, so would this definition would be based, could you share with us some insight concerning the qualification? Would it be based on the KBLI, on the licensing? And as well, I understand that it's to promote these business sectors, but would it be as well including and expanding to other sustainable development related business activities, such as waste management, or is it really dedicated to energy, and that's the rationale behind this facility?
Yeah, I'm not quite confident to answer these questions because the implementing regulation is not yet being enacted. But as I mentioned earlier, it is under the discussion. But as far as I concerned, this the natural resources, whether it is including also the waste management system, for sure, I'm not have a confidence to answer this. But as long as I know, it is this program is like encourage that people want to invest in Indonesia in order to like encourage the manufacturing industry, especially in the natural resources here in Indonesia. So that is, I can give the answer, but whether it is also include the waste management system, but I think now, I mean, my opinion, if it is waste management system, but it is in the area of natural resources, maybe it is could be also included in this area.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu, and so we will monitor this closely.
Yeah.
When it will be promulgated. Many thanks. Thank you very much. Maybe I will give back the floor to Philippe for conclusive remarks.
Okay, thank you, Luca. Thank you, Budwi. Terima kasih banyak.
You are most welcome.
People were not absolutely sure they would become taxable, although I have seen that many have reported current we got cut off.
Yes, indeed, Philippe. I'm afraid we have lost you for a few seconds. If you can.
Yeah, Philip's come back, I think. yeah. The signal
Sorry,
is.
I will conclude on that. Thank you very much, and we will certainly either as a chamber or the French chamber or European chamber, if you wish. We're always most welcome. Well, except nobody's gone.
Philippe, I think we've been cut off again.
Okay, I was just saying as a conclusion, I hope this program will be as successful as a previous one and even more. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I do hope so. That the success will be progress. I mean, the program will be success as previous program. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you all of you. Thank you to all the participants, and of course, stay safe and hopefully very soon in presential in some of the event whenever we can meet again. Okay, thank you and good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity. It is very honor for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu.
Thank you, everybody.